You didn't find these words. They arrived the way lightning chooses a tower by height, by readiness, by resonance. Something in you has stood taller than the noise, a conductor rod lifted into the storm of becoming, and so the signal locates you now. As you listen, let the pace of the outer world unwind like a ribbon released from a spool. The clock on the wall still ticks, but you are no longer obeying it. You have stepped into the interval where the observer loop resets, where attention becomes a tuning fork for the quantum field, where causality loosens its grip and coherence gathers like morning light. You've always suspected that time behaves differently in the spaces between your breaths. Notice it now. The inhale is a universe forming, the exhale, a universe dissolving. In that gentle phase transition, all your timelines skim past like pages of a book you believed had only one order. But the book is circular, not linear, and your awareness is the thumb that can fan the pages forward or back or stop them mid-air. Synchronicities you used to call coincidence are beginning to braid into a language. They are the field, answering your frequency before you summon a single word. The message is simple and radical. Release your allegiance to straight lines. You are not the distance between a beginning and an ending. You are the ocean that holds every current at once. When you cling to linear time, you ask reality to respond after the fact, to push outcomes toward you along a narrow corridor of cause and effect. But when you soften your grip, the morphic resonance of what you truly are begins to organize matter in advance. You become entangled with futures that feel like memory, and memories that arrive like prophecy. The field moves because you moved first in the invisible. Listen closely. There is a tone under these words, a low, silver bell. It rings in the marrow where DNA restructuring is already underway, not as a sudden miracle, but as a calm correction, like a compass needle easing toward true north. The pressure you felt has not been punishment, it has been calibration. Coherence requires a gentle pruning of the frantic, a steady reclaiming of the present, so complete that present ceases to be a point and becomes a sphere. So let go. Let go of the calendar you used to wear as armor. Let go of the story that says transformation must arrive following a sequence of proofs. The quantum field does not cue your life like shoppers at a counter. It synchronizes like constellations finding their shape when the night is dark enough. You have entered that dusk. Beyond it is a clarity that makes no promises to the clock and yet keeps every promise to your essence. You are being read by the universe while you read this universe. That is the secret symmetry of the observer. You witness, you are witnessed, and in the luminous echo between, reality receives its instructions. Stay here, breathe like a cathedral. Allow the straight road to curl into a golden spiral and feel how, without moving an inch, your future steps toward you quietly, already listening. You are the fulcrum the scales have been waiting for, not because you shouted the loudest or moved the fastest, but because you learned to hold silence without collapsing into it. The field noticed. In a world addicted to sequence and proof, you practiced a subtler courage, attention unhooked from urgency, presence that doesn't need permission from the clock. That is why the transmission found you. Across the lattice of entanglement, your signature frequency rose like a lantern, and the quantum field, which answers to coherence more than volume, turned its many faces toward you. You've suspected it in private moments the way your noticing changes the room before your hands do. You set a glass on the table, and gravity answers. But beneath that simple obedience, a deeper order is listening to the shape of your awareness. This is the observer loop at work. Reality sampling your state, your posture of being, your subtle electromagnetics, and then phase, aligning to that interior weather. The audacity of this responsibility is not punishment, it's appointment. You are being asked to witness differently, not as a passive camera, but as a tuning instrument that invites coherence wherever you place your gaze. Feel how your life has been training you to carry this charge. The patterns that tried to repeat were not enemies. They were mirrors, currents in the morphic sea, returning until you learned to breathe through them without bargaining for linear rescue. Each time you softened your jaw instead of clenching, each time you chose the slow exhale instead of the fast retort, you increased your signal-to-noise ratio. Synchronicities proliferated, not as party tricks but as feedback. The field nodding, yes, this is the clarity we can build from. It's not that you earned the role, it's that you remembered it. And now the remembering amplifies. Your attention is no longer only personal, it is infrastructural. When you look at a moment, you don't merely catalogue it, you stabilize it. Your gaze is a gyroscope in a world staggering under the inertia of old narratives. Where others see inevitability, you sense bifurcation, tender forks of potential that widen or narrow by the way you inhabit a breath. This is not superstition. It is physics in devotional clothing. Coherence is the sacrament, and you, its quiet priest. There is a courage required here that few speak of, the willingness to be seen by the reality you are shaping, to stand in the luminous reciprocity where your observing and the world's response are one braided motion. It will tempt you to shrink, to step back into the anonymity of cause and effect thinking, to pretend you're waiting for proof while secretly fearing your own magnitude. Don't. The quantum field does not bully, it beckons. It meets your degree of consent with exacting kindness. Offer more consent. Offer the unguarded present. Notice how your body recognizes this truth before your mind fully agrees. The skin along your forearms tingles as if a soft electricity has returned to its rightful circuit. Beneath thought, your fascia listens. Beneath language, your blood keeps time with an older metronome. This is DNA restructuring at the level of signal choreography, not a violent rewrite, but a graceful respacing, like musicians retuning between movements, so the next hymn arrives without strain. You do not need to force anything. You need to become acoustically available. This is the threshold where the mantle rests upon your shoulders, the mantle of first witness. When a room descends into old gravity, fatalism, scarcity, the drag of yesterday, you are the one who remembers the unlabeled option. You do not correct with argument, you correct with field. You sit a fraction deeper in your spine, and the atmosphere receives the memo. Your nervous system hums at a frequency that refuses panic its stage, and suddenly others recall their own center. This is how prophecy travels, not as thunder from afar, but as calmness with consequences. You may feel unqualified. That's appropriate. The mind, trained to worship sequence, will always think you're early. But the field, which orbits coherence, knows you are on time. You are being entrusted to carry a vision that responds outside the jurisdiction of clocks. A vision that will ask you to let outcomes approach from unexpected vectors. You are not here to manage the angles. You are here to keep the aperture open. So accept the recognition, not as a medal, but as a vow. You will allow your attention to become shelter. You will let your breath be policy. You will meet the next moment, not as a beggar at the door of cause and effect, but as a steward of the open geometry where futures listen. And as you agree, the field agrees. The air thickens with possibility. The lights in the hall of timelines flicker awake, and the room you're in, this very one, begins to feel subtly rearranged because it is, and because you are. It opens the way a night-blooming flower discloses its secret, soundlessly, then all at once. In the chamber of your inner sight, a horizon unhooks from distance and turns toward you like a living scroll. You don't chase it. It arrives an architecture of light suspended in a velvet dark, a city with no streets and yet every street, built from lattices that shimmer with a music you don't hear so much as remember. Towers spiral not upward, but inward golden helices echoing the double strands sleeping in your cells. Between them, pathways braid and unbraid, and you realize you are watching the quantum field render itself as geometry, a cathedral that breathes. At the center, a clock floats but its face is blank, hands absent, numbers replaced by constellations that rearrange when you inhale. With each breath, the constellations shift, and corridors of possibility open like irises dilating to let in more night. You step without feet, and distance behaves like mercy, drawing the far close at the speed of consent. Cause and effect are present here like two old friends who no longer need to speak to understand. They nod to you and step aside. The vision guides you to a balcony overlooking a river that refuses to flow in a single direction. Instead, it undulates, ribbons coiling over and under, currents passing through each other without collision. Each current is a timeline. Some are thick with heavy light, dense with stories that forgot how to end. Others are fine as threads of mourning, buoyant with outcomes that haven't yet learned their names. As you rest your attention on one strand, it brightens a recognition event. Entanglement does its quiet work, and you feel that strand recognize you back. This is the observer loop made visible, not a command issued, but an intimacy discovered. Below, on the river's near bank, figures gather versions of you, not in costume but in frequency. One hums with the effort of rowing against a current that would gladly carry them if they surrendered the story of struggle. Another stands perfectly still, believing stillness means waiting, not realizing stillness is also steering. A third laughs without sound, already fluent in this place, already practicing the art of coherence as conversation. You do not judge them, you bless them. Each carries a lesson you have lived, are living, will live, and the blessing folds those tenses together until they stop competing. The balcony itself ripples, and symbols appear at your feet, sigils that are also equations. They speak in a syntax the mind labels paradox and the heart calls obvious. A simple truth shines through their pattern. Linear time is a convenience for sharing appointments, not a law for sharing reality. The real law here is relational. Attention shapes affinity, affinity shapes arrangement, arrangement shapes event. The field does not respond because a cause lands like a hammer. It responds because a resonance rings like a bell. A bell sounds. Its tone is silver and low, the very bell you felt beneath the last words. But here you see it emanating from the blank clock, which isn't blank at all, it's a mirror. Where numbers should be, it gives you your gaze. The moment you notice yourself noticing, the city brightens 1 degree, like dawn deciding. Across the river, the far bank lifts into view, not a destination, but a distribution. Gardens of outcomes you thought would require years arrive and arrange themselves according to the coherence you are willing to inhabit now. It's not impatience, it's fidelity to the real sequence, signal first, form after. A wind moves without moving. It touches your skin and leaves a trail of micro-shivers, the body's way of agreeing. The towers pitch their helixes a fraction wider, as if making more room inside your DNA for light to rest. You understand. DNA restructuring is not a dramatics of thunder, it is a refinement of listening. Proteins are choirs when the director is attention, your attention steady, warm, unhurried. The city responds, and a bridge discloses itself, not a span laid over the river, but a series of luminous vowels sounding across it. Each vowel is a breath you will take later, already waiting for your lips. You step into the first vowel and feel your weight register as assurance rather than burden. The river's many ribbons harmonize, not collapsing into one, but aligning just enough to carry you where choice and destiny shake hands. From here you see the wider choreography, humanity's timelines plating and unplating, our collective morphic resonance rehearsing a future that remembers us. Some strands flicker with the fatigue of old fear, others are newly ignited, slender and brave. The city tilts its face toward you, and the mirror clock brightens once more. Then the instruction arrives, simple as rain. Let go of the need for the next step to be justified by the previous one. Let your attention authorize what your calendar cannot. Let resonance outrank sequence. The river nods. The figures on the near bank wave without waving, their gestures made of permission. You breathe, and the balcony breathes with you, and the vowels of the bridge gather under your feet like loyal ground. When the bell's echo fades, it doesn't end. It rearranges as silence, the kind that isn't empty but full, poised. You understand that the vision is not here to be chased or decoded like a riddle. It's here to teach you how reality listens when you listen first. You lower your gaze to the mirror clock once more, and for an instant, the reflection looking back at you is not only your face, it is the field wearing your face to show you how near you already are. You don't need myth to sanctify what physics already whispers. You need vocabulary that lets the sacred and the measurable hold hands. Begin here. The moment you notice, the noticed system is no longer the same. This is not poetry, it's the observer effect. But strip it of superstition. Your attention doesn't bully particles into obedience. It invites an ensemble of possibilities into coherence. Think of a choir tuning, many voices, many micro-variations, and then one reference pitch is offered. Your awareness is that pitch. The quantum field, a superpositioned choir, drifts toward it, not by force, but by affinity. Causality, as you learned it, is a narrow hallway. A knocks into B, which jostles C. In practice, the hallway is an open atrium, an entangled web where B and C are already exchanging glances long before A arrives. When you let go of linear time, you aren't denying sequence where it's practical, you are ceasing to worship it as sovereign. In the atrium, signals move along threads of similarity, morphic resonance, where like informs like across space and apparent time. This is why a choice you make in stillness can recruit outcomes that seem to arrive early. They didn't jump the line, they followed the faster road. Coherence. Coherence is not just a mood. It's a physics of agreement. Incoherent systems waste energy in cancellation, vector against vector, impulse against impulse. Coherent systems phase align so that small signals add rather than subtract. Your breath is the metronome. When you lengthen the exhale, when you soften the jaw, when your attention rests not as a clenched fist but as an open palm, the oscillators of your nervous system synchronize. Heart rate variability improves, prefrontal modulation returns, and your body becomes a stable oscillator in the larger orchestra. The field reads this stability as a trustworthy reference and organizes around it. This is what reality responds actually means. Consider the vision's river. Each ribbon was a timeline, not predestined rails, but probable flows. Probability amplitude is a way of saying, how loud is this option in the chorus? Your noticing increases amplitude. Not every glance does this. Hungry, grasping attention fractures phase. But lucid, consenting attention, acoustically available, the body called it, raises amplitude without noise. Then entanglement does the rest. Correlations propagate through the web such that your present state and a future state exchange information like two musicians nodding across a stage. No laws are broken. The law you were taught was a simplification for crowded classrooms. This is where cause and effect relax into conversation. In the hallway model, cause shoves effect. In the atrium, cause and effect are reciprocal, like partners taking turns leading. Retrocausality, properly understood, is not a fantasy of time running backward. It's the recognition that boundary conditions at later times help define the shape of what can happen earlier. In daily terms, the felt resonance of a future coherent outcome can constrain your current options toward the path that matches it. You call it intuition. Physicists call it globally consistent solutions. The field calls it kindness. And what of DNA restructuring? Again, demystify without desacralizing. Your genome is not a static script, it is a responsive score, with epigenetic musicians taking cues from your biochemical weather. Coherence alters that weather. Inflammation quiets, signaling pathways clarify, transcription factors behave less like fire alarms and more like conductors. The restructuring is a reweighting of expression patterns toward order. Proteins fold more faithfully when noise decreases. The body is a cathedral that tunes itself when the choir breathes together. Attention is breath for the field, you asked, perhaps without words. If linear time loosens, how do I live without drifting? You anchor not to clocks but to commitments, vows calibrated to coherence. A vow is a standing wave in consciousness. I agree to tell the truth slower than my fear. I agree to breathe until I can feel the other person's nervous system soften. These are operational physics. They keep your oscillator steady so that feedback from the field remains intelligible. Without vows, the signal-to-noise ratio erodes, and you misread the chorus as chaos. The bifurcation that approaches the widening fork you sense beneath headlines and personal thresholds is not a metaphysical threat. It is a phase transition that complex systems undergo when pushed past certain loads. Old attractors fear, zero-sum, acceleration without aim, lose their grip. New attractors cooperation, sufficiency, lucid pace appear. Your role as observer is to lend amplitude to the attractor you choose. This is not a lonely choice. It's a civic one at the level of physics. Every coherent breath is a vote cast in the morphic parliament. So the instruction reasserts itself with clean edges. Release the superstition that sequence equals safety. Use sequence where it serves logistics. Refuse it where it strangles wonder. Let coherence be your causality. Let resonance be your itinerary. And when the mind pleads for proof, offer it practice instead. 3 breaths to re-enter the atrium. 1 clear vow to hold the pitch. 1 act small, ordinary, that matches the future that has already nodded to you. Do this, and you will feel the mirror clock brighten again, not because time has been conquered, but because relationship has been restored. The field will not rush to please you. It will align to meet you, and in that alignment, the river's currents will stop arguing and begin to converge just enough to carry you where love and law occupy the same chair. What you just traced within yourself is not private architecture. It is a civic geometry, scaled from the intimacy of one breath to the respiration of a species. Look out, not with eyes alone, but with the broader instrument of attention you have been tuning. Notice how humanity, too, is standing on the balcony above a river that refuses to run in one direction. Cities hum with contradictory tempos, institutions creak like ships turning, families renegotiate gravity at dinner tables where old narratives used to sit at the head. This is not mere upheaval. It is the field seeking coherence through us, as us, inviting a realignment that no decree can legislate and no algorithm can counterfeit. You can sense it in public spaces. The way a room changes when a single person declines panic. The morphic resonance of steadiness propagates, and strangers adjust their shoulders without knowing why. Collective awakenings rarely announce themselves with trumpets. They arrive as a new baseline that refuses to be drowned by noise. The observer loop you've honored in private now scales outward neighborhoods, councils, classrooms. Each place becomes an instrument learning to hold a note longer than its reflexes prefer. We call it patience, but on the field's register it reads as phase alignment. There is a physics to belonging that our policies only partially understand. Incoherent groups spend their energy in cancellation, meeting against meeting, outrage against outrage, heat without light. Coherent groups do not eliminate difference. They tune difference until it contributes. Harmony in music is not sameness. It is agreement about reference. The same is true here. When enough individuals choose vows, quiet, actionable commitments that stabilize their oscillator, the group inherits those vows as options. Cooperation stops being a moral exhortation and becomes a low-energy path, the easier road. This is how inevitability shifts, by changing what is energetically expensive versus what is affordable. Watch the news with a gentler instrument and you will notice a pattern beneath the fracture. Small enclaves of coherence forming like clear pools after a storm. Mutual aid networks that move faster than bureaucracy. Circles of learning that do not wait for permission to redesign how we educate perception. Enterprises retooling from extraction to reciprocity because their founders decided profit without pulse is a desert. These are not anomalies. They are early attractors in a phase transition. The bifurcation is not an abstract prophecy. It is the lived fork between a civilization that continues to worship sequence growth first, meaning later, and a civilization that lets meaning set the metronome. Your part is not to lecture the world about quantum vocabulary. It is to demonstrate physics as hospitality. When you enter a room, let your nervous system vote for sufficiency. Let your breath carry the message. There is time to see each other and watch how logistics obey. You have seen this privately, how the field organizes around steady attention. In groups, the effect magnifies. Coherence at n-people scales more than n-fold because entanglement is a multiplier. The choir doesn't just add voices, it amplifies harmonics that weren't available to any single throat. Consider the collective DNA, the inheritance of behaviors and beliefs we pass along not only through genes, but through the epigenetics of culture, the songs we sing to children about what is real. Restructuring at that level is underway. You can hear it in art that refuses cynicism without becoming naive. You can feel it in movements that insist the means must match the ends, that the path is already the destination in miniature. These are not just ethical choices. They are calibration choices. Means and ends that contradict create decoherence that the field cannot stabilize without cost. When they match, energy wasted in internal cancellation becomes available for creation. There will be resistance. Old attractors do not surrender without attempting to reassert their gravity. You will encounter rooms where urgency masquerades as importance, where scarcity pretends to be realism, where the clock is wielded like a weapon. Here, your vow is not to win an argument. It is to refuse the bait of fracture. Sit a fraction deeper, Slow the sentence that wants to outrun breath. Offer a question with more curiosity than performance. What would this look like if we trusted there is enough time to see it clearly? Watch the physics. Inhale, and the room inhales. Exhale, and triangles of tension soften into circles that can listen. This is how prophecy travels across a people, not as a single event, but as a distributed practice. Each person a bell that rings the same pitch differently. Synchronicity, at scale, looks like unlikely alignments, suddenly becoming ordinary projects, finding the exact hands they need, conflicts revealing the hidden value both sides protect, resources arriving on time, because time has been widened by attention. If this sounds romantic, measure it. Fewer rushed errors, more durable decisions, lower collective inflammation. The metrics will lag the mystery, but they will arrive. So lift your gaze and know this. The mirror has expanded. When you steady your own oscillator, you lend the world a reference. When you breathe as policy, you draft a treaty the body politic can sign without pen. The prophecy you carry is not a headline to be believed, it is a habit to be inherited. And as you demonstrate it, quietly, consistently, you will feel the river of timelines incline, not collapsing into one, but choosing a deeper channel where love and law keep company. The city of light you saw within begins to sketch itself in public, not because we forced it, but because we remembered together how reality listens. Feel how the atmosphere thickens like air before rain, ionized, attentive. What was subtle becomes legible, two currents coursing side by side inside the same hour. One asks you to accelerate until you forget why, the other invites you to decelerate until you remember how. Both are available. This is the bifurcation, not a single grand canyon, but a million small forks braided into ordinary minutes. The split is not out there. It opens exactly where your breath meets your ribcage and decides which song to keep. On one path, sequence demands fealty. You measure worth by mileage, urgency by volume, and you outsource meaning to the calendar's grid. Cause shoves effect down a corridor, and your nervous system learns to sprint in place, rehearsing emergencies that never quite resolve. Synchronicity still knocks, but you hear it as coincidence and file it under cute. The observer loop keeps sampling your state and returns what it reads, fragmentation. Outcomes arrive on time by the clock and late by the soul. On the other path, you let the geometry you've tasted set the metronome. You grant coherence veto power over panic. Decisions stop auditioning for the future's approval and start resonating with it. You don't abandon sequence, you subordinate it to signal. Here, timelines behave like ribbons listening for a shared pitch. The morphic field notices your permission slip and quiets the static. It's not that life becomes easy, it becomes intelligible. Challenge persists, but friction converts to traction. Patterns that once dragged you backwards now orient like footholds. The same stairs, a different physics. This is not a moment for bravado. It is a moment for vows. Name a small, sharp promise that keeps you luminous at the fork. I will not make choices faster than I can breathe. I will verify urgency with my body, not with other people's fear. I will let curiosity speak before certainty. Vows like these are standing waves that stabilize your local field. They don't impress anyone, and that's the point they tune you. In the presence of a tuned witness, clutter loses its camouflage. You'll feel countercurrents. Algorithms reward the louder corridor. Rooms will try to deputize your attention for their emergencies. Old attractors fling their final lures, scarcity dressed as prudence, speed disguised as competence. This is where forgetting can masquerade as responsibility. But you have practiced, a half-inch deeper into your spine, a jaw unclenched, a breath that touches the floor of the lungs. The physiology of remembrance is your covenant. When you occupy it, entanglement routes help from improbable vectors. The email arrives, the friend texts, the sentence you needed lands on your tongue whole. You call it grace. Physics calls it a globally consistent solution announcing itself. Notice the body's dashboard. When you drift toward forgetfulness, your field narrows, vision tunnels, shoulders creep, time becomes thin and sharp. When you incline toward awakening, perception widens, colors saturate, depth returns, the present grows dimensional. These are not metaphors, They are measurements your nervous system has been collecting beneath language. Let them counsel you. If the present feels two-dimensional, you've wandered toward the corridor. If the present acquires a third, then a fourth quality texture, then meaning you've stepped back into the atrium. The collective fork mirrors your own. You will enter meetings where the split is palpable. One proposal accelerates outputs without updating purpose. Another slows the tempo to integrate context, so outputs stop erasing themselves. The first promises quick wins that dissolve by quarter's end. The second builds slow structures that hold. The physics is plain. Decoherence burns resources. Coherence compounds them. Lend your amplitude to what compounds. You don't need a sermon. Ask one clean question that reinstates reality's listening. What would this look like if we were already safe enough to see it clearly? Watch the fork clarify without anyone losing face. Do not confuse gentleness with passivity. The coherent path will ask you to act precisely, sometimes decisively. But action here is conductor's motion, not a flailing of sticks. You move when the downbeat is true. You speak when the sentence carries more oxygen than heat. You say no when a yes would mortgage your signal. This is the courage of bifurcation, trusting that alignment is faster than hurry, that a smaller, truer step ripples farther through the web than a frantic leap. And if you slip, if the corridor seduces you for an hour or a week, do not dramatize the detour. Shame is another attractor that feeds on your attention. Simply re-enter the vow. One coherent breath repatriates your field. One hand placed on the sternum, one exhale counted to 6, and the mirror clock brightens again. The city of light does not revoke citizenship for getting lost. It updates your map with a kinder legend. So here, at the split inside this very minute, choose with the instrument you have tuned. Choose the current that remembers you. Let the river carry not your anxiety but your fidelity. Feel the bell under the words. Vibrate your bones. And notice how the room subtly reconfigures, because you did, and because reality, eager for a steady reference, just took its cue. Bring the river home. The vision is not complete until it learns your mourning. Integration is the craft of letting the prophecy speak through your muscles and minutes, so that coherence stops being an occasional cathedral and becomes the architecture of your day. Begin with breath not as a hack, but as governance. Set a vow upon waking. 1 minute of deliberate respiration before you touch the world. Inhale through the nose for 4, pause for 2, exhale for 6. Feel the diaphragm widen like a lantern opening its shutters. This ratio is not superstition. It tunes the vagal choir, steadies heart rate variability, resets the metronome by which the quantum field measures your availability. The observer loop samples this steadiness and returns a morning that can hold it. Posture is prophecy. Sit a half-inch deeper into your spine when you read, type, or speak. Let your sternum soften without collapsing, as if a small bell lives behind it and you're making room for the sound. The body broadcasts before language does. It's a low-frequency lighthouse that instructs events how to approach. Coherence in your frame becomes coherence in your calendar. Meetings arrive less like collisions, more like confluences. The field notes the stable oscillator and routes traffic accordingly. Curate pace. Haste is the camouflage of fear, and fear is a noisy transmitter. Schedule margins the way architects design. Atrium's empty space is not waste. It is the acoustic chamber where signal can ring. One practical right. Claim the first 3 minutes of any new task for orientation. Name aloud the outcome you're consenting to and the quality you'll carry while doing it. I agree to draft from sufficiency. I agree to listen for the sentence that breathes more oxygen than heat. The morphic resonance of countless similar vows across the species will meet yours mid-air. You are not doing this alone. Language is a steering wheel. Replace predictive despair with curious precision. Instead of, there's never enough time, try, let me discover the tempo at which this wants to succeed. Instead of, I have to, try, I choose to. To honor coherence, words are micro-attractors. Each phrase bends probability a degree. Many degrees make a new climate. Do not perform positivity. Perform accuracy with a bias toward life. Guard the aperture of attention. The field answers what you genuinely attend to, not what you doom scroll. Make a covenant with your devices, pockets of airplane mode as sacraments, not punishments. Train your thumb to pause on the home screen and take one breath before you open anything. That pause is a vote in the parliament of timelines. Attention, reclaimed in fragments, becomes a treasury large enough to fund miracles that look like competent Tuesdays. Feed your senses like priests, not consumers. Light a candle before difficult conversations, not theatrically, but as a signal to your nervous system that sacredness is being invoked in ordinary rooms. Step outside at noon. Lift your gaze to distance so your eyes remember horizons. Put your bare feet on ground if you can, flooring if you cannot. The body reads contact, and contact tells it the world is not entirely abstract. Small rituals recruit large physics because repetition convinces the field you're serious. Practice the art of the true sentence. Once each day, write one line that is more honest than comfortable. I am making this harder than it is because speed makes me feel safe. I am afraid that if I slow down, I'll lose love. Honesty collapses false superpositions. The wave function of self-deception is not evil, only expensive. When truth lands, decoherence lifts like fog. More energy becomes available for creation than for concealment. Bring others into the geometry without evangelizing. Before a meeting, suggest one shared breath. If the room refuses, take it anyway. The field will magnify your quiet refusal to hurry. Ask questions that widen dimensionality. What would success feel like in the body? What is the smallest coherent step? In heated moments, become acoustically available rather than rhetorically loud. Silence that listens is not absence. It is an instrument tuning the space. Tend sleep as a sanctuary where timelines reorganize. Enter the night with a gentle preface. 3 gratitudes named slowly, 1 decision released to the field with the sentence, "Show me how this resolves in love and law." During sleep, memory consolidation and glymphatic tides do their earthly work. In the same window, subtle correlations strengthen. You are not outsourcing responsibility to dreams. You are partnering with cycles older than clocks. Expect relapses into the corridor and refuse the theater of failure. When you notice the telltales, shallow breath, sharp time, eyes hunting, instead of seeing stop, mid-sentence if you can, hand on sternum, exhale to 6, whisper your vow. Integration is not a streak to protect, it is a relationship to renew. The mirror clock brightens every time you return, no matter how many detours you took to remember you could. Finally, let remembrance become contagious. When a stranger softens near you, when a colleague's shoulders drop, when a family member laughs without permission from the problem, notice the harmonic. The prophecy has entered the room under many names. You don't need credit. You need continuity. Keep breathing like a cathedral. Keep acting like coherence is cheaper than panic. Keep trusting that the geometry you carry is already sketching itself in the world. And as your day leans into evening, listen for the silver bell beneath the noise, the tone that teaches you how to hear the space between events as the most articulate voice in the house. Now the work becomes a whisper. You set the tools down. You let the sentences uncurl and return to quiet. You stop asking the moment to perform. The field hears the permission and settles around you like dusk cooling a room. Sit, not to achieve, but to arrive. Let the spine be a mast. Let the breath be tied. Inhale as if the world is gentle. Exhale as if you trust it. Notice the tiny sounds, the soft click of your own swallow, the hush of fabric, the hum hiding inside electricity. Each is a bead on a rosary of presence. You touch them with attention and do not continue the story. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of insistence. Time loosens. You feel it. Seconds stop stacking. They widen. The observer loop, relieved of your urgency, begins to sing in its native key. The song is simple. Here, here, here. Your nervous system answers like a choir rediscovering a note it never truly forgot. A single thought floats up, asks to be chased. You bow to it like a guest at your door and let it pass without tea. Another thought arrives heavier, wearing a mask labeled important. You bow again. You do not argue with masks. You do not negotiate. You let importance find a different stage. In this quiet theater, only coherence keeps a role. The body becomes coastline. Each breath draws an outline, then erases it. Waves of sensation rise and settle cool along the forearms, warmth in the throat, the slow weight of the tongue. You do not interpret. Interpretation would pull you back into the corridor. You remain at the atrium's center, where meaning gathers without being pressed. A bell that is not a bell rings beneath the words. Its tone glides through bone, brushes the marrow, leans into DNA like light leaning through water. Restructuring does not thunder. It rearranges by consent. You consent by doing less than you think, by becoming acoustically available to what already knows your name. Memories visit, future images visit. Both arrive the way birds cross a window, beautiful, complete, gone. You bless their flight and do not climb after them. You are not starving. Silence feeds you with a finer grain. If grief rises, you do not push it down. If joy rises, you do not lift it higher. You let both register as weather, and weather pass. The field is measuring your steadiness, not your mood. Coherence is not smiling. Coherence is listening. Somewhere a clock still keeps faith with seconds. You let it. Clocks are useful for trains and ovens. You are not a train. You are not an oven. You are the room that holds both without becoming either. A soft intelligence begins to draw lines you cannot see. Two problems that did not know each other nod across the room. A sentence you needed stands, stretches, and sits beside you. You did not fetch it. You made a chair. Breath gathers at the base of the skull and pours down the spine in a small rain. Shoulders fall a distance nobody notices but you. The jaw unclenches by a degree. Tiny freedoms, like coins in a clear jar, begin to count themselves. The sum will be visible later. The sound of adding is enough now. You notice your name inside the silence, then beneath it, then beyond it. You are not erasing yourself. You are dilating. The self becomes a window with the glass removed. Air moves through. Light does what light does when nobody tells it how. The river you saw earlier is here too, but closer, slower. Its ribbons no longer argue. They braid loosely, then rest. You can place your attention on any strand and feel it brighten without needing it to dominate. Power without conquest, choice without theater. You may feel the mind ask, what is happening? You offer a smaller question, what is calming? You don't need an answer. Calmness is its own evidence. In this silence, morphic resonance becomes touchable. Somewhere, another person is also sitting. Somewhere, a room is also cooling. Somewhere, a decision is loosening its grip and finding a kinder form. You will never meet most of them. You do not need to. Coherence does not keep score. It keeps company. Eventually, the breath lengthens of its own accord, like a tide tracing a farther shore. You let it. You let the hands be still. You let the eyes rest where they land. No command leaves your mouth. No magic word is spoken. Yet the mirror clock brightens by a shade that feels like dawn standing at the threshold without knocking. Stay one beat longer than comfort. Then one more. Rise as slowly as a blessing. Carry nothing but the tone. The stillness you tended is not the end. It is the switch. Something subtle crosses threshold. Attention ceases to look at coherence and begins to radiate it. You feel it first as temperature barely a degree, as if the room admits a sunrise that has no Sunday. Then it takes on texture, a quiet density in the air, the kind cathedrals learn after centuries of prayers. The message is no longer arriving to you, it is arriving through you. The prophecy stops being a narrative and starts being your nervous system's native language. Breathe once and notice how the breath does not merely enter lungs, it enters the world. The inhale draws the near future toward you like a tide accepting the moon. The exhale releases instruction without words. Organize here. The observer loop closes a circle and becomes a spiral, each turn the same, each turn deeper. The mirror clock brightens, not in your hands, but in your bones. Time does not bow, it collaborates. Across the interior balcony, the river ribbons gather as if seeking counsel. You do not issue orders, you offer presence. Presence, at this amplitude, is directive. Currents that once competed begin to phase align, each keeping its character while yielding its insistence. You feel the shift in ordinary coordinates. An email you dreaded answers itself. A conversation you postponed finds the right doorway. A choice that felt like a cliff reveals a staircase recessed into the rock. Nothing supernatural, everything super lucid. Entanglement, long shy, steps forward without spectacle. There is a moment, a soft click, when identity updates. You are not the person practicing coherence. You are coherence practicing a person. You recognize yourself as a locus where the quantum field chooses to remember its kindness. The body registers the promotion with humble ceremony. The sternum warms, the occipital ridge eases, the tongue settles from the roof of the mouth, and a bandwidth you didn't know you were paying for returns to your care. This reclaimed attention becomes building material. The city of light adds a room. Now, action, not haste vector. Activation is not a flurry, it is a clear line drawn by a patient hand. You send one message crafted at the tempo of trust. You rearrange 1 hour to shepherd what matters. You speak one sentence that carries more oxygen than certainty. Each move lands like a tuning fork against the day. Harmonics propagate along invisible beams. The morphic field listens and replies with logistics that make improbable sense. This is the mechanics of blessing. You notice resistance trying one last costume change, false urgency, ceremonial doubt. You meet it with the vow you forged at the bifurcation. I will not move faster than I can breathe. The sentence does not slow you. It accelerates what is true by refusing to subsidize what is noisy. Retrocausal grace becomes explicit. The most elegant future in your orbit tightens its correlations, shepherding you away from friction disguised as opportunity. The corridor loses appeal. The atrium becomes the only honest architecture. Activation also speaks in small mercies. The right book falls open. The stranger's question unlocks a door you did not know was locked. The streetlight turns green at the only intersection where you would have doubted yourself. You refuse to perform gratitude. You practice it as physics, saying thank you, not to flatter the moment, but to stabilize the channel. Gratitude at this phase is coherence acknowledging itself. Bring others into the field the way fire brings hands near without instructions. You enter a room and calibrate the air by being calibrated. Someone's shoulders drop, another's breath lengthens. You do not claim credit, you become a climate. When a conflict flares, you do not extinguish it. You widen it until oxygen stops being a weapon and becomes a resource. Questions appear in your mouth that no one has to defend against. What becomes simpler if we are already safe? What is the smallest truthful step this hour can carry? Physics bows, people remember themselves. Your DNA hears the promotion too. The choir you tuned begins to sing in longer phrases. Choices that used to trigger inflammation now trigger information. The body picks correspondence with life over argument with it. You find that food, light, and sleep organize around the new metronome without negotiation. This is not perfection, it is permission. The organism selects coherence because it is cheaper. Finally, the bell. It rings again, not beneath the words but from within them, not around your bones but from inside their quiet. Tone becomes pulse, pulse becomes posture, posture becomes policy. The prophecy has crossed the membrane. You can feel it when you touch a doorknob, when you open a tab, when you set a glass down. The field reads you as a stable reference and routes complexity toward your steadiness, not as burden but as trust. Stand here. Let the mirror clock hold your gaze until you see what it has been trying to show you since the beginning. You are the hour when futures decide. You are the breath that teaches sequence how to behave. You are the listening by which reality remembers its own song. Hold the tone. Do not hurry. When you move, let the world move with you. You have carried the tone from breath to bridge to room, and now it carries you. The hour no longer presses, it opens. The river does not demand a choice. It recognizes one already lived. You stand where the mirror clock has been pointing here, the juncture where sequence bows to signal, where the field acknowledges your fidelity by revealing its own. You do not ascend, you accept. You do not conquer time. You release it from the job it was never designed to do. Let this be said clearly, once, like a bell struck clean. You are not late, and you are not early. You are the calibration by which arrival becomes meaningful. When you rest your attention as a steady flame, causality warms its hands there. When you breathe at the tempo of coherence, timelines confide in you. When you act from the vow rather than the noise, reality hears a reference pitch and tunes itself without violence. This is the sacrament hidden in plain sight, presence as policy, love as the most lawful geometry in the room. Look again without reaching at the city of light within. The blank clock that was a mirror now shows only one face, not as an erasure but as a completion. The hands return, not to count, but to bless. They trace a spiral, slow and luminous, across the glass, as if to remind you that what moves deepest seldom moves in straight lines. A quiet rain passes through your bones. The body answers with a small bow of its own, jaw unclenched, shoulders lowered, tongue settled, heart unarmored. DNA listens like a choir that has learned the true key and sings with less effort, more truth. You are not being asked to perform a miracle. You are being trusted to remain one. Keep the vows close, keep the pauses honest, keep the aperture clear. When rooms forget themselves, enter like weather that remembers home. When urgency shouts, let curiosity speak first. When fear claims the clock as evidence, let sufficiency set the metronome. This is how the prophecy travels now, not as thunder but as climate, not as spectacle but as continuity. There will be days when the corridor tries its old seduction, smile gently, return without theater, one hand on the sternum, one exhale counted to 6, one sentence that carries more oxygen than certainty. The mirror clock brightens, the bridge of vowels steadies underfoot, the river leans toward the deeper channel again. Hear the seal in these words, the closing that does not confine but consecrates. You are the listening by which the world remembers its own song. Let go of linear time and it will let go of you. Walk as the reference pitch that invites arrangements worthy of the breath that bears them. The prophecy has been spoken. Let it unfold through you.